When I watched one of these episodes at a very young age, it made me enjoy the grim adventures of Billy and Mandy, but the more I got older, it really shows I haven't gone back to the show anytime soon, or probably never at all, whenever it's either an episode I wanted to review, or it's the fact that I can't be able to take any of the world building in this show seriously. Look, if you still enjoy this show, more power to you, but it doesn't change the fact that after rewatching this episode, I just realized that during my binge watch of Victor and Valentino, there was an episode that was similar to this, but it's done much more better. This episode is called The Love That Dare Not Speak Its Name. It's honestly the stupidest titles I've ever seen, especially involving the grim adventures of Billy and Mandy. And the Victor and Valentino episode is Love at First Bite. If I'm gonna be perfectly honest, there are a lot of similarities between both shows. Mainly the monsters, and the fact that the characters themselves are likable, especially in the scenarios that they're in, is somewhat questionable of how they managed to overcome them. But when it comes to the grim adventures of Billy and Mandy's episode, in comparison to Victor and Valentino's episode that came out in the 2010s, late 2010s, it really feels like the writers of Victor and Valentino saw this episode and thought, we can make a better episode than this. The Billy and Mandy episode begins with Billy stated that he wants to grow up as Grim, mainly the fact that he is close friends with him. And considering he stated that at the beginning of the episode is a huge contradictory. Look, Billy is stupid, but he's supposed to be stupid in a likable sense, but in this episode, he has none of that. They encountered Blandy, who is the antagonist of the episode, to which that Billy is in love with, but Blandy is in love with Grim, which Billy is fully jealous of. Usually I would discuss more about how this doesn't work, especially for a Billy and Mandy episode, but let's get into Victor and Valentino's episode. Victor and Valentino meet Maddie, who Valentino has a massive crush on, by love at first sight, which is the same way as Billy did in the other episode. But the thing is, the major difference when it comes to the characters who look just like Billy and Valentino is the fact that Maddie's motivations really make sense, because in the first half of this episode, heading straight to the second half, we've seen that she really isn't the type of person that should be around in the neighborhood, unlike the citizens who get along easily. Because let me tell you, this just goes to show that there is something wrong with Maddie. And since Victor is figuring out the problems involving Maddie, Valentino thinks otherwise, since that he's officially going to be having dinner with the girl of his dreams. Considering that Valentino is the main character of this episode, and he doesn't really think of who Maddie truly is until she meets her family. It's worth knowing that this episode really shows that Valentino isn't as smart compared to Victor, and the fact that Victor is fully aware of what is going on, making him somewhat smaller than Valentino in this episode, just goes to show that Valentino just isn't really the type of person that understands love at first sight completely. But let me tell you, he is much more better than Billy from the Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy. Because, to be perfectly real with you, unlike in this episode, well, the characters are actually likable, it's really impossible for Billy to be likable in this because the flammalization just kicks in. Now, Mandy, regardless if she became flammalized as the series progressed, is still likable until towards the end, and Grim is the most likable character in this entire episode because she didn't try to steal Billy's girlfriend. But let's be real, Blanty's motivations, unlike Mandy, just goes to show that it's the most realist motivation of all time. Look, I understand that this show has gross out humor and random stuff despite the mean-spirited tone in order to make filler episodes like this, but at the same time, when I first watched this episode at a very young age, I didn't know what to think of it. And for me personally, it's an issue when I don't even have an opinion from an episode that I didn't hate nor like. But since I got older, I didn't like this episode, not even a bit after rewatching it. Let's not forget that even if Grim isn't the strongest Weeper out there, he is still stronger against Billy and maybe Mandy. And for me personally, it just feels off-putting the fact that he is being taken down by Billy, and this is one of the issues of the episode. Since that Blandy is just trying to find some jealousy in order to find suffering, he wants to fall in love with Grim so that Billy can attack him. And that's it. Nothing else. You know, when I have brief memories of remembering the characters from the show, their motivations are justified. But when it comes to Blandy, his whole motivations just feels so phoned in that it's difficult to take this filler episode humorous at best. Which is why that the bits of Billy just taking down Grim isn't humorous. It just gets really irritating, and regardless if what Billy said in the beginning of the episode was supposed to be a punchline of what he's going to be doing later on, it doesn't make the episode good. Because for me personally, this episode aged really badly, knowing full well that Victor and Fantino did this formula much more better. You see, when Fantino arrives at Mandy's house, it's revealed that he's not having anything to dinner. As it turns out, he is the dinner for Mandy and her family. The true forms are lizards, bats, and to be perfectly real with you, it's a better setup compared to how Blandy was portrayed in the Grim event in the Billy and Mandy episode. Because in all honesty, the fact that this family is willing to eat Fantino for supper just goes to show that the creatures in the show, regardless if they're different compared to Billy and Mandy, it doesn't change the fact that I found their motivations a whole lot more better than Blandy, because as far as I'm concerned, having people fighting each other over jealousy is honestly a stupid, no mercy cop-out. It would have been one thing if Billy had been waiting in the streets for Blandy to hang out with him, even if it may be part of his stupidity, but the fact that Grim has stated that there is no us, which he refers to him and Blandy, and the fact that Billy is still attacking him just goes to show that they're really trying everything to make this jealousy angle work, even though that Billy stated early on that he wouldn't do anything bad to Grim. And to be perfectly real with you, the punchline is honestly a stupid punchline as you rewatch this episode years after it premiered. This episode is more than a decade and a half old, and looking at it now, there's multiple reasons onto why I never go back to the show, because even if I did watch the show during my childhood was towards other things that are much more better than this. And for me personally, the ending, well, Mandy exposes Blandy in front of Billy. Billy just doesn't care, which leads to 20 years into the future that Billy and Blandy are getting married, but Blandy wants Grim, which leads to Billy attacking Grim again. Usually, I will have questioned on the fact that Blandy got into this, and the fact that she wanted to marry Grim, but I'm gonna be real with you. This show is difficult to take itself seriously when it's trying so hard to be funny. And even if you do not enjoy Victor and Fantino, keep this in mind, regardless of the show ending last year, I can't deny that these episodes are a prime example of the people who have been working on the show are learning past mistakes from previous shows' mistakes. Granted, I'm not sure if that's really the case, but considering that it's rare to find a love episode centering around two characters that look too alike, I'm only going to assume that it's only possible if monsters or bad or dark magic are part of the cartoon itself. Because that's pretty much the only way for shows like The Grim Adventures of Billy Mandy and Victor and Fantino will ever have an episode involving that. And if you want to know why I'm rating this episode way higher than usual, is because the climax. In the beginning, Mandy hates water or listening music from the harmonic or something. And Victor and Fantino use that to their advantage against her and her family. For me personally, it just goes to show that this episode has been digging deeper in order to make a character who only appears once and try everything to give her disabilities for the main characters to overcome. Because let me tell you, if you say that in the hero side of Billy and Mandy, well, their disadvantage is Billy being an idiot, then in all honesty, it really shows of how animation has changed over the last 2 decades. If this episode aired right now, I can guarantee you that it would be criticized when it comes to Billy's flammization and the fact that Grim is being tortured. It just doesn't work like that. Like, if you're gonna say that Grim had been tortured beforehand, there were legitimate reasons. But here, it really feels like it's just thrown in, and the fact that Grim isn't dealing with a creature assaulting him rather than Billy just goes to show that Blandy's motivation in this is just to see suffering because she's just bored out of her mind and she doesn't want to do the fighting herself. If anything, Mandy's family will probably destroy Blandy no matter what, because it just goes to show off how serious these characters are compared to the antagonists in The Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy. Granted, it's mostly debatable, but at the same time, Blandy is a weaker villain, while Mandy is a much more interesting villain. Not really interesting, but at the same time superior. If I'm ever going to see any positivity involving The Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy, it would either be the Spider Queen movie, which I was planning on reviewing in the future, but unfortunately, I just have last minute decisions. I've been thinking about this since 2017, and the fact that if the holidays come around, I might review the holiday episodes, but let's be real, it's still low on my list whether I want to review something holiday related once we get into Halloween, Christmas, and etc. As for Victor and Fantino, I'm aware that there are bad episodes, and since that were in Cartoon Crisis 3, there's a slight chance I might review one bad episode. But the thing is, I'm fully aware that the bad episodes from this show aren't near as bad as the Billy and Mandy episodes, mainly the fact that the characters are likable and worth sitting through when you're a grown adult. Granted, it's debatable if both shows are superior from one another, but at the same time, just understand that it's difficult to get back into childhood cartoons knowing full well that they haven't aged well, from my perspective at least. I'm giving the Billy and Mandy episodes a 2.5 out of 10, while the Victor and Fantino episode gets a 7.5 out of 10.